When a global sex symbol confessed to hating her own body and an $80 million contract became an invisible cage, well, this is the story of Janet Jackson at her darkest point, but creating a work that was decades ahead of its time.
Welcome to this deep dive. We're really thrilled you're here with us today because right now we are stepping way back into the year 1997.
Yeah, quite a year.
Right, we're basically walking past the bouncers and stepping straight into the velvet-lined paradox of Janet Jackson's pivotal, just culture-shifting album, The Velvet Rope.
And it's a journey you really have to brace yourself for, honestly. We're looking at an artist who was at the absolute undeniable zenith of her commercial power.
Unstoppable.
Completely unstoppable. This is someone who took her massive global platform and essentially used it to intentionally dismantle her own flawless image. And the fascinating thing we're going to unpack today is how, in the process of tearing herself down to the studs, she accidentally laid the architectural blueprint for the music you listen to right now. Okay, let's unpack this, because to really get why this matters to you, the listener, and to the whole landscape of modern music, we really have to paint a picture of where pop culture was in 1997.
Oh, it was so shiny.
Exactly. Think about what was on your radio. We are talking about like the Spice Girls Wannabe. We're talking about Hanson's Bup.
Right, very upbeat.
The mainstream was shiny, upbeat, and incredibly polished. And right into the middle of that very sunny pop climate, Janet signs an $80 million contract with Virgin Records, which, at the time, that was the biggest recording contract in the history of music, period. She beat out Michael Jackson. She beat out Madonna.
Which means the expectations were astronomically high. When a label hands you $80 million, they aren't paying for an experimental art project.
Right, they want a hit.
They expect a massive return on investment. The expectation for the executives, and frankly from the public too, was that she would just deliver another unstoppable pop juggernaut. They wanted Control Part 2. They wanted another Janet album, just capitalizing on that confident, globally digestible sound that had just sold, 14 million copies?
14 million, yeah. And if I'm an executive at Virgin Records in 1997 and my $80 million artist walks into my office with an album dealing heavily with chronic depression, eating disorders, and severe body dysmorphia, I am terrified.
Oh, totally panicking?
From a strictly business perspective, releasing The Velvet Rope seems like absolute commercial suicide. And we need to talk about where that trauma actually came from, too. Her body image issues weren't just your standard celebrity insecurity.
No, not at all.
They were deeply rooted in her childhood. Like when she was acting on the 1970s sitcom Good Times, the producers actually forced her to bind her chest.
Which is just horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just a kid hitting puberty, and they forced her to physically hide her development so she would continue to look like a young, non-threatening child on camera.
Imagine the psychological weight of that for a young black girl. She was literally taught that her natural developing body was a problem that needed to be strapped down and hidden from the world. Janet herself described carrying that suppressed trauma for her whole life as kicking dust under the rug.
Yeah, the rug metaphor.
She kept sweeping it under, over and over, until there was so much dust she literally started choking. So bringing all of that agonizing personal darkness into a mainstream pop record, I stand by it. It's a massive risk. It's walking out on a tightrope without a net.
Well, I won't argue that it was a risk, definitely,
Mm-hmm.
but I will challenge the idea that it was commercial suicide. If we look at it through a historical lens, it was actually the era's greatest act of bravery.
Okay, I can see that.
And it really starts with how she utilized the title itself as a psychological framing device. The velvet rope is a brilliant double metaphor. Think about what a velvet rope actually does in the real world. On one hand, it represents the emotional barriers we all build to protect ourselves from judgment and pain.
Like keeping people out.
Exactly.
Oh.
We put up a rope to keep people out of our messy internal lives.
But on the other hand, a velvet rope symbolizes exclusivity. It's that innate human desire to feel special, right? To be chosen, to be on the VIP side of the club.
Precisely. She was leveraging her megastar status, really risking alienating the mainstream to intentionally unhook that barrier. She was inviting you, the listener, behind her own personal velvet rope to witness her most vulnerable, unhealed self.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. That internal feeling of being trapped behind a barrier, of needing to control who gets in and who stays out, was actually mirrored by a very real, very suffocating external force in her life at the time.
Talk about René.
Yes, her secret husband and collaborator, René Elizondo Jr.
He is a highly complex piece of this puzzle. Now, objectively speaking, you really cannot deny his contribution to her iconic visual image during that era. He was deeply creatively involved.
Oh, for sure.
He co-wrote hit songs with her, he directed her music videos, and he literally formed her visual identity. I mean, think of that famous 1993 Rolling Stone cover.
The topless one.
Right, the one where she is topless, and there are a man's hands reaching from behind to cover her chest. Those are René's hands. As an artistic statement, he was inextricably linked to the Janet Jackson brand.
I hear that, but I have to push back hard on giving him too much artistic credit without acknowledging the cost, because the overlapping nature of their relationship was incredibly toxic.
It was very complicated, yes.
Yes, they were collaborating, but there was an intense, smothering level of control happening. Janet was the megastar. She was paying for everything. She was the primary breadwinner, yet René was the one dictating her image.
She was very critical.
So critical. He would heavily criticize her body. He would critique her clothes. If she just wanted to walk out the front door to run an errand without a full face of makeup on, he would warn her not to. Because according to him, it would ruin the fantasy for the public. That isn't just collaboration, that is suffocating.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
It's putting the $80 million artist into a cage and holding the only key.
It absolutely created an unsustainable tension. You have a woman who is the global face of success, projecting total confidence, but who feels entirely insecure, controlled, and distrustful behind the scenes.
Just totally trapped.
And that psychological breaking point is what led to her physical rebellion. She needed visible, permanent markers of her emotional shift. She needed to reclaim autonomy over the very body that had been bound on good times and critiqued by her husband. So she got the Sankofa tattoo permanently inked on her wrist.
I absolutely love the meaning behind this. The Sankofa is a traditional Akan symbol from West Africa. It's depicted as a bird with its head turned backward, taking an egg off its back.
Such a powerful image.
It really is. The philosophy is that you must look to the past and understand your history before you can successfully move forward into the future. It's such a profound statement of intent. She made it the central visual motif for the entire album.
She did.
Yeah.
And she didn't stop there either. She completely changed her presentation. She adopted natural red hair. Now, in the late 90s, for a mainstream black female pop star to step away from the expected pristine, relaxed hair standards and rock vibrant, textured red hair, I mean, that was a bold act of defiance.
Huge.
She also underwent extreme body modifications, getting her septum, nipple, and labia pierced. She was reclaiming ownership of her physical form.
Which brings up an incredibly memorable event from this era. There was this photo, ironically shot by René, used for a European tour billboard. It featured Janet in a profile shot, wearing a push-up bra and a cardigan, and it clearly showed her pierced nipple through the fabric.
Oh, the outrage was immediate.
It caused such a frenzy in Europe that it allegedly caused literal car crashes. The authorities actually stepped in, banned the billboard, and forced it to be taken down. And I love Janet's response to this.
She didn't back down.
Not at all. She didn't apologize. She publicly called out the blatant sexism of banning a woman who was simply expressing her own sexuality freely on her own terms. She was taking her power back in real time. But this raises the big question for me. So what does this all mean for the music itself?
Right, how does it sound?
Yeah. How do you take that intense physical and emotional rebellion, that deep childhood trauma, and translate it into a pop record?
Well, you do it by completely flipping the traditional music production process upside down. She worked with her legendary producers, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. To understand how radical this was, you have to know their standard workflow. Usually, Jam and Lewis would build these immaculate, funky beats and musical structures first.
Okay.
Then, they would hand the track to Janet, and she would write melodies and lyrics to fit the vibe of the music.
Right, so the beat dictates the emotion.
Exactly. But for the Velvet Rope, Janet arrived at the studio with dark, highly poetic, deeply disturbing lyrics already written out in her journals. They were raw, unedited expressions of her psychological state.
Wow, so they had the words first.
Yes. So Jam and Lewis had to completely abandon their usual method and adopt a lyrics-first approach. They had to act as sonic architects, really, building an entirely new landscape from the ground up to cradle these incredibly heavy emotions.
The technical details of how they achieved this at Flight Time Studios are just mind-blowing. It's this crazy clash of analog grit and digital wizardry. They were using pioneering gear like the massive Harrison Series 10 recording console, classic drum machines like the LinnDrum and the Roland TR-808, and the Yamaha DX7 synthesizer.
All the heavy hitters of that era.
Yeah. Now, for anyone who isn't a massive audio nerd, the TR-808 is what gives early hip-hop and electronic music that deep, booming, foundational bass.
And here is where their genius really shines. To match the anger and the darkness of her lyrics, they intentionally pushed the drum levels in the red on the analog tape.
Wait, explain what in the red means for the listener who might just use streaming apps and doesn't deal with physical tape.
Oh, absolutely. So if you picture a clean audio signal as a perfectly smooth, rolling wave on a screen, harmonic distortion is what happens when you force that wave into a container that is too small for it.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The peaks of the wave literally get flattened out or clipped by the limitations of the tape machine. When you record in the red, meaning your volume meters are peaking into the red warning zone, the equipment can't handle the signal perfectly. It introduces a gritty, aggressive, harsh sound.
Like it's breaking.
It sounds like the drum machine itself is tearing apart. It creates an almost metallic, violent beat.
The analogy I keep coming back to is that the production of the velvet rope sounds like wrapping a delicate glass ornament in sandpaper. The harmonic distortion of those drums acts like a harsh, abrasive sonic shield.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. And what is it shielding? It's designed specifically to protect the incredibly fragile, whisper-thin layers of Janet's voice. They use racks of analog effects like reverbs and delays to record her vocals so they sounded like crisp, airy purrs layered right on top of that grinding beat.
The contrast is brilliant.
The music is aggressive, but her voice is deeply wounded. And what's wild is that the sonic architecture didn't just serve as a diary for her pain, it honestly functioned like a crystal ball. This album was making social prophecies.
It was incredibly prescient. Let's look at the track, Empty. This is an IDM, which stands for Intelligent Dance Music, and trip-hop track.
Not your typical pop sound.
Not at all. IDM is a subgenre known for complex, glitchy, cerebral beats that aren't necessarily meant for the club, but for sitting in a dark room with headphones.
Yeah.
The track actually opens with the literal sound of keyboard typing and dial-up computer modems connecting.
Which is crazy for the time.
Keep in mind, this is 1997. Long before social media, long before smartphones and dating apps were dictating human interaction. She wrote a song predicting the intense loneliness and emotional disconnect of online relationships.
She saw the future. The lyrics literally say, damn, disconnected. She was questioning what kind of reality digital connections actually create when there is no physical touch involved. If you look at our world today, full of parasocial relationships and digital isolation, it's spooky how accurate she was.
And she didn't just predict the future, she actively tried to shape it through social advocacy, often rebelling against the safe, heteronormative standards of her own label. She insisted on including the track Free Zone.
Oh, that's a standout track.
It's a spoken word funk track where she explicitly targets and fights homophobia. She explores concepts of boy meets boy love and relationships that exist outside societal rules.
And doing that on a major mainstream pop album in 1997 was huge. Think about the cultural climate back then. This was around the time Ellen DeGeneres came out and faced massive mainstream backlash. Pop radio was rigidly straight.
Very rigid.
And it's important to note, whether you agree with the politics of it or not, we are just imparting the themes Janet was laying out in her original work. She approached it naturally as an artistic reflection of the world she saw and the people she loved, despite the label previously pushing back against themes of same-sex relationships. She did the exact same thing with her cover of Rod Stewart's Tonight's the Night. She intentionally kept the female pronouns in the lyrics, explicitly exploring eroticism between women.
Which solidified her as a fearless ally and a massive figure within the LGBTQ+ community, later earning her a Vanguard Award from G8. But if we are talking about emotional resonance and social commentary, we really have to talk about Together Again.
Oh, I love that song.
This track became a massive, global #1 hit, but its origins are heartbreaking. Janet originally wrote it as a deeply sad, mournful ballad dedicated to her friends, her dancers, and the millions of people around the world who'd been lost to the AIDS epidemic.
But if you listen to Together, again, it doesn't sound like a sad ballad at all. It makes you want to dance.
No, it doesn't sound sad, and that's the absolute brilliance of it. Jam, Lewis, and Jackson sat down in the studio and completely rebuilt the song in 30 minutes. They transformed this dirge into a vibrant, pulsing 1970s-style house and disco track.
In 30 minutes? Wow.
Yeah, and from a music theory perspective, there is a stroke of pure genius in the second bridge. The song modulates, It shifts up a minor third into E-flat major.
Break that down for us. What does a shift to E-flat major actually do to the human brain when we hear it?
Sure. If you're listening to a song and suddenly it feels like the whole track is taking flight or walking out of a dark tunnel into the sunlight, that's a modulation. When they shift the key up a minor third, it physically lifts the vocal register. It forces the singer and the listener's ear to reach higher into a brighter frequency range.
Oh, I get it.
That specific key change literally transforms the sonic feeling of heavy grief into soaring, euphoric hope. It acts as a paradox, using joyful dance music to embrace, process, and elevate profound sorrow.
The emotional whiplash she puts you through on this album is just staggering because you have the literal euphoria of together again, and then a few tracks later, you get hit with What About?
That is a tough one.
This song deals head-on with the cycle of domestic violence. It starts out with these soft, acoustic, flamenco-style guitars. It sounds intimate, almost like a gentle proposal or a love song. But then the hook hits, and it violently flips.
The contrast is jarring.
It turns into aggressive hard rock with screaming electric guitars and crashing drums, the lyrics detail being hit in the face and begging a partner to stop. There's this chilling detail about the Velvet Rope tour stop in Houston. Janet broke down crying on stage after performing this song. She just looked at the crowd and told them, "This is me."
That moment strips away all the artifice of pop stardom. It's just raw, unhealed trauma on public display. There is no velvet rope in that moment. And that brings us to the aftermath.
Right, the reception.
When you drop an album this heavy, this complex, how does the world react? In the context of her previous juggernauts, The Velvet Rope was initially viewed by some critics and label executives as a commercial disappointment. Her previous album, Janet, sold 14 million copies. The Velvet Rope dropped to 10 million.
Which, let's be real, 10 million is still a massive, life-changing number.
Of course.
But I know that drop in sales wasn't just about the heavy themes. It was partly because U.S. pop radio stations basically blacklisted the lead single, Got Till It's Gone. It was this heavily Afrocentric hip-hop soul track featuring Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest, and it was built around a brilliant sample of Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi.
Such a good sample.
Janet even personally called Joni Mitchell to clear that sample, but because it was moody, black, and rooted in hip-hop soul, it didn't fit the brightly colored, overly processed pop mold of late 90s radio. They balked at it. So you have a drop in sales and you have radio resistance. It begs the debate, was this album a commercial failure or was it the ultimate artistic success?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is undeniably the ultimate artistic success. In fact, it is the definitive blueprint for modern music. Think about the specific formula she created here.
Okay.
She took melancholic, cold, distorted electronic beats, paired them with angelic, ethereal, whisper-thin vocals, and wrote lyrics that were raw, confessional, and sexually fluid. That exact juxtaposition. That is the absolute DNA of what we now call alternative R&B.
You're right. You literally cannot have the landscape of modern R&B without this album acting as the bridge.
Exactly. Without the massive risks Janet Jackson took on The Velvet Rope, there is no The Weeknd. Abel Tesfaye has openly admitted that this specific era of R&B, which pushed extreme vulnerability and dark soundscapes, heavily influenced his entire sonic identity.
Makes total sense.
Without this album, there is no SZA's Critrol. There is no Frank Ocean's Blonde. They all inherit this permission to explore their own insecurity, their depression, and their fluid identity on a massive pop scale. She essentially invented the modern transition album, the pivot point where a pristine pop star breaks their own mold to reveal their darkness. You don't get Rihanna's Anti without Janet walking through this door first.
So to bring it all together, Janet Jackson took her heaviest baggage. She took the trauma of childhood exploitation, the crippling body dysmorphia, the toxic control of her marriage, the grief of losing friends to a plague. She dragged all of it into Flight Time Studios.
Every bit of it.
She didn't hide it behind a catchy beat. She used it. She forged a piece of sonic armor out of harmonic distortion and poetry that completely changed the trajectory of R&B forever. She took that invisible cage of an $80 million contract and she broke it wide open from the inside.
She certainly did. She redefined what a pop star could be. She used the Velvet Rope not as a tool of exclusion to keep people out of her life, but as an invitation. She let millions of people into the messy, painful, beautiful reality of being human.
And there is one final mind-bending detail about this masterpiece that we want to leave you with today. After 75 minutes of exploring her own agonizing dark trauma, after the screaming guitars of What About and the heavy introspection, the album concludes. And there is a period of total dead silence.
It's very striking.
And then slowly, a hidden track begins to play. It's called Can't Be Stopped. It completely shifts gears from everything else you've heard. It's this bright, upbeat, 70s-style soul song. But here's the kicker. It wasn't written for her. Janet specifically wrote Can't Be Stopped for marginalized youth who are facing racism and bigotry.
Such a beautiful pivot.
Right. She wrote it to tell them that their inner strength is greater than the negativity pulling them down. Which leaves us with this thought for you to ponder. After doing all that grueling, painful work to face your own demons and heal your own inner child, is the final step of true healing actually turning your attention outward and becoming a shield for someone else who is suffering? Thank you so much for stepping inside the velvet rope with us today for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.